Welcome back. We're going to do chili today. It's been requested since it's cold and snowy, even though we still have some leftovers from Thanksgiving. And this is a recipe we want to share with you all, so let's get to it. So we're going to turn the burner on high, and we use 2.5 pounds, 2 to 2.5 pounds of ground. It would be preferably half sausage, but just use what you have. It's one that's not in the written recipe, and everybody that makes it says, I can never get it to taste like yours. It's because of what I'm going to show you right now. Take a little bit of chili powder and cumin, and I sprinkle it on the meat as I'm cooking it. Not too much, about a tablespoon of each, or half to a tablespoon, depending on what you want to use. The other thing we do is we add the onions. It's about a half cup of dehydrated onions, but it's one whole onion if you're going to use fresh. And if you want a little bit of heat, add whatever chili pepper you like. This is jalapeno and it's dried, so I just add it in right now. And then you cook your ground. And I say cook your ground, not brown it. So we want to actually get it nice and done as much as you can. It brings a little more flavor out. And I use a high heat. You can use whatever you want. And with the spices and the onion, and we're having jalapeno in this one. I used to do bell peppers, but one of our kids is allergic to peppers, so that's why we use jalapenos. Sometimes we use hatch chilies. And it just brings all the flavor out while you're cooking it this way instead of letting it boil. It's just a different flavor profile. One thing I forgot to say at the beginning, it takes about an hour and a half to really get it finished from start to finish. Sometimes 2 hours, depending on how fast you are on your prep and what prep you need to do. You also have to add the garlic to the meat. It's about a tablespoon of garlic, minced fresh. I knew it wasn't smelling right. One thing is, if you let it cook instead of just browning, you have cooked through the moisture that comes out, so all you have left is the meat and then any grease. A lot of times if you use good ground, you don't have to drain it. That's the difference between like browning. You still have a bunch of moisture in your meat, and it doesn't bring out the good flavors in it. Not a ton of grease in there now. Then there's some, but there's not over a huge amount, so I'm not going to drain it, but you can drain it if you like. So the meat's ready. You can see not a lot of grease. You can see that just that stuff on the bottom of the pan where it's starting to kind of stick a little bit. That's when your meat's done. So we're going to turn it to medium. Now we're going to add the tomatoes and the beans and the spices for everything. So we've got this particular size pot. We've got 2 cans of crushed tomatoes, undrained. Of diced, we use diced, but you can use whole if you want, or plum, or whatever.
And they're just plain, right?
They're just plain. And is a 8-ounce can of tomato sauce, a 6-ounce can of tomato paste, 2 cans of black beans. I drained most of it out just because it turns the chili a darker color. 2 cans of kidney beans, undrained. You can drain them if you prefer. I just do it, it gives it more liquid. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. It's a little, medium's a little much. Let me get rid of these cans. We're going to give it a stir real quick, kind of let the tomato paste and the tomato sauce work its way through. I would say bring it back to a boil, but it's already boiling. I had to turn it down. So turn it to a simmer, and then we add the spices. So we've already added the minced garlic. We've already added a little bit of chili powder and cumin to season the meat, and the onions when we did the meat. That goes in at the time with the meat. Now we're going to add more spice to give it more of that chili flavor. It's 2.5 tablespoons. Sounds like a lot, but it's not really. 2.5 tablespoons of chili powder. Tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of black pepper, depending on how much heat you like, what flavor. And then we have a tablespoon of cumin. And then we just mix them together just like we did before, just to incorporate everything. And depending on if you're using canned beans or fresh beans, you're going to want to add some salt. And depending on how much, what you're using, if it's canned or fresh beans, if it's unsalted or, you know, low sodium, you're going to want to add some salt to bring out the flavor. It's about a half teaspoon to a teaspoon. I just say salt to taste. So now that we have it all together, we're going to add a little bit of salt. I'm going to add a half a teaspoon. And we use, in our house, we like the Redmond pink salt, but regular iodized salt works. And that should give it enough without being too salty. We just add that to bring out the flavors of the other ingredients. Okay, so we're gonna let this simmer for about an hour, and you can eat it now and it would be fine. But by letting it sit and simmer, we're bringing all the flavor profiles together, and that is really the difference between when people make this recipe versus when I make it. Is a lot of people make it, let it boil for 10 minutes, it's hot, so they just serve it. This will bring it together, stir every 5 or 10 minutes. I've got it on low, like a number 2 on my stove, which is just hot enough to keep it simmering. But you want to stir it so nothing gets stuck on the bottom. And we'll be back in a little bit, and we'll be finishing up.
Okay, now I'm going to take over and do my part while that is still simmering and coming together. I'm going to make the cornbread that we like to make. It is from the company that shall not be named. And I literally have kept this bag because we like the recipe that's on the back. We've just tweaked it a little bit. I'm doing a double batch, but I'm just going to give you guys single batch amounts. So we have the cornmeal already ready to mix. And the oven is already preheating to 425. It calls for 1 cup of the cornmeal, 1 cup of flour. We like to do 4 tablespoons of sugar. We like ours sweeter. 4 teaspoons of baking powder. And a half teaspoon of salt. We're just going to give that a quick mix before we add the wet ingredients. Okay, and then to that, we are going to add 1 cup of milk, 2 eggs, or 1 egg, sorry. Like I said, even though you're seeing me double it, I'm telling you the single recipe. And then a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. And then we are going to beat until fairly smooth, about 1 minute. Just making sure I'm getting everything off the sides as I'm doing this. and getting all the way to the bottom. That looks about right. Now the reason that we doubled this is so that we can do it in a 9x13. The recipe calls for an 8x8 greased pan, but everyone in our house likes this, so I need to make more. Just gonna spread it out a little bit, and it bakes for 20 to 23 minutes or until the fork or knife comes out clean.
We wanted to thank you guys for coming out with us tonight and sharing one of our favorite recipes. The kids love this. And it's easy, super easy to make. We used all cans today. You can go all fresh. I've done that before too. But it's just something that super easy to put together. It does take about an hour to cook. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.